definitely the leakiest product launch in recent memory, I'm finally allowed to talk to you today about the Viper V2 Pro mouse from Razer, for those of you who haven't managed to grab a copy at retail yet. The best way to think about the V2 Pro is that it is to Superlight what the Viper Ultimate is to the G Pro Wireless, and honestly, I'm not sure what took them so long. So we have some big improvement in the weight category. We're down to 58 grams from 74 on the Viper Ultimate. This is also available in white. The paint process there adds 1 gram. And we have some tweaks to the side buttons where they stick out more from the body this time, making them easier to hit. But they've removed the side buttons from the outer side, making them impossible to hit. For some, this is a welcome change because right-handed users often complained about those outside buttons getting in their way, but left-handed users are left out this time around. It is important to note then that both the Viper Ultimate and the new V2 Pro will remain in market. The V2 Pro is launching with a price of $149.99 with no available charging dock, while the Viper Ultimate can currently be had for around $70 to $80, depending on whether or not you get the dock. That's down considerably from its regular price of $129, presumably to burn some stock before this new mouse hits market. So if you've been on a budget and those top-tier wireless mice have been out of reach, this is a good time to buy. The coating overall has a bit more texture than last time, and there are some important changes. There's no integrated side grips anymore. It's a smooth design all the way around, so you can choose to apply grips if you want, which luckily are included in the box. This also makes it easier to visually refresh your mouse if your side grips wear down over time. The logo is just in spot gloss black because there's no chroma or RGB here anymore either. This is done to cut weight and also to not pull on the battery. This battery is rated at 80 hours here versus 70 on the Viper Ultimate, despite them using a smaller and lighter battery this time. As far as battery life, I can't really speak too much to SteelSeries or Rocket, but I use Logitech and Razer mice a lot. These days, I mostly main the G303 Shroud, and I have to charge that mouse like once every 3 weeks on average. Glorious wireless mice with all that RGB still require some pretty regular charging, but for all the top tier mice that have let go of that RGB, I don't really think this is much of a factor. Still, luckily on the V2 Pro, we see Razer finally make the jump to USB-C charging instead of the micro USB, and they've deleted the charging dock going forward. The V2 lacks contact points for the dock too, so there's no backwards compatibility there. A couple years back, I really liked the dock, but these days I just move my keyboard cable over to my mouse at the end of the day, and I come back to a full charge, so the USB-C port here is a very welcome change. The switches here are their newest optical Gen 3s, and by now I would think everybody is familiar with these. It uses light as opposed to mechanical contact, so there's no need for debounce. This in effect makes them faster and more durable over time. They are fast for sure, and the Viper has great latency. They have been refining these over time to make them sound and feel closer to a regular mechanical switch. They're a slightly harder actuation than most mechanicals. They're louder and lower pitched as well. They stay pretty consistent over time too. I have a V2 version that I've logged a ton of miles on. The triggers here have quite a bit more post travel than I'm used to on the G303, still very similar to the Viper Ultimate. And unlike a lot of things that I point out in reviews, this is noticeable to me in game. This combined with more side play as well versus the G303, these triggers just overall feel less stable to me. When I initially mained a Viper, this didn't really stick out to me at all, but after getting used to the G303 and then moving back, it did take a few days before this wasn't really a factor. And to keep some perspective on this, I get a similar trigger feel on the Superlight, with the Viper having just a touch more post travel. The reduced weight on the V2 Pro has the byproduct of being a more resonant shell as well, so the clicks can get pretty loud and echoey inside the body. Not really a fan of that. As far as I can tell, this is the same scroll wheel. I like it. It rides really low to the frame. It's got a really light depress, no rattle, just a little bit of case resonance like you heard in the sound test. New side buttons feel very good. Love the distance from the shell. Light depress as well, but feel really solid. No real pre or post travel, and that lower edge makes it so you can just move your thumb directly up to trigger, so my thumb naturally rides in a more comfortable place right under them on this flatter shell. Really like these. The feet here have been redesigned as well. Everything is rounded off. We still have two little guys in the front and like a dopey smile for the rear glide. This is uninterrupted since there's no longer a spot for the dock. There's no place to stow the sensor on the body this time either. I'm not a fan of that. If you're the type of person who buys and uses one mouse all the time, probably not a big deal. But if you own a few and you cycle through them, it does get pretty annoying trying to keep track of all those dongles. This still does include an extender and the SpeedFlex cable that works for play and charge as well for when you do need to recharge. And the sensor here is new. This is the Focus Pro 30K optical. This has a higher DPI, not for use at 30K, but results in more precision at lower DPI. Max acceleration and the speed are both up. There are also more granular adjustments to the asymmetrical cutoff and synapse this time around. The big headline here is that this sensor can now track on completely transparent glass. I don't have any to test here, unfortunately, but don't think of this sensor as like a giant leap in performance. It's just an evolution in performance. Real world sensor wise, I don't notice a meaningful difference between it and the Viper Ultimate or the Superlight or the G Pro or the 303 or whatever. Now that could be because I just don't play at a high enough level to notice, or it could be that we've reached a place where everything is just good. It's probably both. I mean, these days you have to make a pretty terrible mouse or just have some complete garbage firmware for it to stand out as bad in the sensor department. I do personally play better with this versus the G Pro or the Superlight, largely due to shape, and I do prefer it over the Viper Ultimate in terms of both weight and side buttons. Most talented players I know, like HAUS or Fresh Reviews, can handle business with just about every wireless mouse out there, including stuff from G-Wolves or Pulsar, so it is more about shape, weight, and comfort, stuff that's highly specific to your personal ergonomics. And they didn't mess with the shape here. It's still that flat, low, symmetrical shell with that nice curve in the back. Still fits me like a glove, but I do find myself missing that little bit of support under my knuckles since I primarily play in claw grip these days. The value conversation here is an easy one. I just don't think any mice should cost this much. I'm convinced the only reason they do is because we keep paying it. Even the G303 that I main costs $130 most of the time. Between that and $160 is what you can expect to pay for any of the flagship models from the big brands. Even G-Wolves has some really big price points. I like $80 to $90 for these, but aside from Glorious and Pulsar, that's just not the world we live in. I can't speak long-term to anything from Pulsar, but I do think that anything from Razer, Logitech, Roccat, or SteelSeries will outlast a Glorious mouse in terms of longevity. Regardless, this is a top-tier competition mouse and it costs what it costs. Given the market, this is what you'd expect to pay for this. Now, as for this V2, if you like the Viper shape and you've always wanted a lighter mouse or the side buttons have held you back, here's your mouse. If you already have a Viper Ultimate and you love it, it's probably best to just stick with it. I don't think there's enough here to warrant an upgrade unless those two specific conditions apply to you. If you don't like the Viper shape or another shape works better for you, I don't think there's anything compelling enough here to pull you over. And if you don't know if you like the Viper shape, grab a refurb wired for $30 or a sale Viper Ultimate for $60 before you dive in here. And if you've been waiting for that Viper Mini wireless, sorry, you're still waiting. So it's not a big, super stoked hype review today. It is a great mouse. I have no problem recommending it. I just feel the same way I did when the Superlight came out. There's gonna be a group of people who've really been waiting for this mouse and another group of people who don't understand paying top tier pricing for a mouse that has cut features from its previous version. You either understand and appreciate the lean into stripped down performance, or you don't. Weight either is a big factor for you or it's not. And I don't think this next thing is really an important metric, but people always want to know. So no, it's probably not going to be my new main. But that's 100% because the shape, the comfort, and the trigger feel of the G303 just work better for me these days personally. This mouse is an awkward size and shape for a lot of people, so don't put too much stock in that. This is a highly personal choice. Another personal choice is my commitment to never stop learning, and for that, I choose Brilliant, the sponsor of today's video. Brilliant is an online learning platform centered around STEM content. They make it really easy and accessible because they focus on interactive learning. Their courses use real-world examples, animations, and highly interactive components, so it really helps fully illustrate a concept. It's not just reading, memorization, and repetition. Logic is probably my favorite course because it works a specific thought process for me that I apply in a lot of situations when it comes to managing and growing my own business. It's also one of their courses that's seen a recent refresh to really ramp up that level of interactivity. I love being able to learn at my own pace and when I have a few moments. Everything's broken down into really short sections. It's not intimidating at all. It's super low pressure. Brilliant doesn't just tell you if you missed the mark on something. It walks you through a detailed explanation of why. They have a huge catalog too, all revolving around the world of math and science. If you need to learn how to code apps or understand how algorithms work, or if you just want to be able to better help your kids with their homework, Brilliant has you covered. If you're ready to get smarter, you can join me and a community of over 10 million learners and educators by going to brilliant.org/badseedtech. As an added bonus, the first 200 of you to do so will save 20% off their annual premium subscription. Big thanks to Brilliant for continuing to support the channel, and thank you so much for your time. This is an exciting day. That is the last B-roll I will ever shoot in this temporary space before I move into the new dedicated studio. I can't wait to show you what I've been working on behind the scenes. That's it for today, and I will catch you all in the next one. Stay up.